Imagine this. You're standing on a corner of 6th Avenue in New York City. Back in 1973, giant cars whiz by, people rush about their business. Suddenly, you spot a man holding a large, cream-colored brick to his ear, beginning a conversation. This wasn't science fiction. It was the moment history split into before and after. But what if I told you that this first-ever call wasn't an act of progress, but an act of personal revenge? To understand who this man was, whom he called, and why his technological triumph was wrapped in such an audacious, almost insulting display of power, we need to dissect that day second by second. We'll see how a single human emotion, the desire to outmaneuver a rival, bequeathed us the future we hold in our hands today. This call wasn't just an event, it was the genesis block in the blockchain of the mobile era. The first unshakable transaction that validated the very possibility of a wireless world. In this film, you'll see more than just the call itself. You'll learn about the secret technology race, a phone that cost as much as a car, and how a single decision by Martin Cooper buried his arch-rival's multi-billion-dollar project. When the phone finally went on sale 10 years later, it cost $3,995. In 1983, that money could have bought a brand new Ford Escort. People were paying the price of a car for the ability to talk on the go. But a war was being waged for this capability. In the ring were two contenders. On one side stood AT&T Bell Labs, an unwieldy monopolist, a giant that had invented the transistor and owned the entire telephone infrastructure of the United States. On the other was Motorola, a daring and agile company from Chicago, known for its two-way radios. This was a David and Goliath battle for the right to define how we would communicate in the future. To grasp the scale, Bell Labs wasn't just a company, it was a scientific Olympus, having produced 9 Nobel laureates, the laser, and the Unix operating system. Motorola wasn't challenging a corporation, it was challenging the very citadel of American science. They held fundamentally different visions of the world. Bell Labs envisioned the future in car phones. For them, a phone was an extension of the automobile, an expensive toy for the wealthy. Their philosophy was that communication was tied to a place. Motorola engineer Martin Cooper's philosophy was revolutionary. Communication should be tied to the person, not the place. The analogy is simple. Bell Labs wanted to build public wells of connectivity across the country to which people would have to drive. Cooper wanted to give everyone a personal flask of connectivity they could carry with them. This war had a face, Joel Engel, head of Bell Labs Research Division. He was Cooper's complete antithesis, respectable, systematic, and confident in his corporation's ultimate victory. For Cooper, Engel wasn't just a competitor, but a symbol of the old world, clinging to wires and blind to the true future. This was a battle not merely between engineers, but between ideologies. Engel's systemic thinking, which built a colossal infrastructure, clashed with Cooper's idea of personal freedom, which placed the individual, not the network, at its center. Victory over Bell Labs was for Cooper a personal triumph over Engel. Now, pause for a moment. Imagine you're an investor in the 1970s. Where would you put your money? In the giant AT&T with its clear car phone idea, or in tiny Motorola with its phone in your pocket, a seemingly crazy notion? Your answer determines whether you've grasped the essence of this revolution. It was a choice between a reliable government bond and the wild stock of a venture startup. One promised a modest return, the other, either bankruptcy or global dominance. Most people at the time would have chosen incorrectly, which is precisely why Motorola's breakthrough was so shocking. Time was not on their side. Bell Labs was just a step away from receiving regulatory approval to launch its car phone network. The Federal Communications Commission, FCC, was already drafting documents that would allocate crucial frequencies to AT&T's project. This would effectively kill the idea of personal communication in its infancy. Cooper had only one chance to turn the tables, just a few months to show the world that a different, better reality existed. And he chose to do it not in a lab, but in front of the entire world, with a device that barely worked. Here it was, the world's first portable cellular phone. Its official name was Dyna-TAC. Unofficially, it was called a shoe or a brick. It weighed 1.1 kilograms, 2.4 pounds, and measured 25 centimeters, almost 10 inches long, not including the antenna. It was bulky, heavy, and inconvenient, yet it was a symbol of freedom. Cooper personally insisted it be small enough to fit in a pocket, though of course it didn't fit in any pocket. To truly grasp its weight, imagine holding a liter of milk or a bag of sugar to your ear. That's what Martin Cooper carried. What was inside? 30 circuit boards, hundreds of components, and a battery nearly twice as heavy as those in modern smartphones. Talk time was a mere 20 to 30 minutes. A full charge took 10 hours. Imagine charging your phone all night just to talk for half an hour. This was technology pushed to its absolute limits. Essentially, Motorola engineers achieved the impossible. They took technology that, at the time, filled an entire car trunk and crammed it into a boot-sized casing. It was like fitting a bus engine into a lawnmower chassis. The development of this prototype cost Motorola the equivalent of $100 million in today's money. It was a desperate all-or-nothing gamble. Failure could have meant the company's demise. Every dollar invested in this brick was an argument against Bell Labs. Let's look at this through the eyes of a Bell Labs engineer. You work in the world's premier laboratory. You know that creating a portable phone with such a battery is almost impossible. Then you hear that some upstart from Motorola is walking around New York City with such a device. Your first reaction? It's a bluff, a trick, a cheap stunt. They simply couldn't believe they had been outmaneuvered. Their disbelief could be compared to Western Union's reaction to Alexander Graham Bell's first telephone, which they dismissed as an electric toy. History loves to repeat itself. Giants are often incapable of recognizing a revolution, even when it's calling them on the phone. This brick wasn't created in a vacuum. It was the result of months of sleepless nights by a dedicated team of engineers. Cooper was the leader, but behind him were people who hand-soldered circuit boards, wrote code, and believed in his audacious idea. The phone wasn't just a piece of plastic. It was the embodiment of their shared dream. The names of these heroes often remain in the shadows. For instance, Rudy Krolop, the lead designer who gave the brick its iconic shape, or engineer Don Linder, who created key circuits. This was a victory not for one person, but for a small, obsessed team. And so, the morning of April 3, 1973, arrived. The team had one working prototype. They had set up a base station on the roof of the 50-story Burlington Consolidated Tower on 6th Avenue. This was the only spot in the city from which their prototype could operate. The entire demonstration hinged on a single transmitter. Everything was ready for the public unveiling. Cooper stood with the phone in hand before a crowd of reporters. He could have called the president. He could have called his boss. But he had long known whose number he would dial first. The scene, the corner of 53rd Street and 6th Avenue. Cooper emerged from the Hilton Hotel surrounded by journalists. He deliberately chose not a quiet laboratory, but the very heart of Manhattan, those concrete canyons. The message was simple. If this technology works here, amid skyscrapers and thousands of radio interferences, it will work everywhere. It was brilliant theater, not merely an experiment. Slowly, he pulled his cream-colored brick from the inner pocket of his jacket. Passers-by stopped, gazing in bewilderment. Cooper pressed the real, physical buttons. Each required a deliberate effort. Unhurriedly, he dialed a number. The office number of his chief rival, Joel Engel, at Bell Labs. On the other end of the line, a secretary located Engel and connected the call. And there it was, the moment of truth. The first words ever spoken on a portable cellular phone. "Joel, this is Marty Cooper. I'm calling you from a cellular telephone. A real handheld portable cellular telephone." Note the repetition. This wasn't just a call. It was a surgically precise blow, delivered to ensure Engel grasped the full scale of his defeat. What did Engel reply? According to Cooper's recollection, nothing. A long, deafening silence hung on the other end of the line. It may have been the loudest sound in the history of technology, the sound of a crumbling paradigm, the sound of a multi-billion-dollar car phone project instantly becoming an antique. Cooper didn't just show him the future, he showed him that the future didn't belong to him. Engel himself later claimed not to remember the call, a classic psychological reaction to a traumatic event, repression. Let's rate the level of audacity. On a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is sending a polite letter to a competitor and 10 is buying their company and firing them personally, this call was a solid 9.5. It was a public, elegant, and absolutely crushing humiliation, disguised as a technical demonstration. Immediately afterward, Cooper handed the phone to a stunned reporter. "Call someone," he urged. The reporter dialed his mother's number. The technology worked. It wasn't a trick. This gesture transformed the journalist from a passive observer into an active participant, a witness to a marvel. Now, the story would be told not as a dry press release, but as a personal experience. News of the call spread worldwide. But while everyone discussed the Wonder Phone, the main question hung in the air within Bell Labs offices: what now? The next day, the answer came from the newspaper headlines. All major publications ran stories about Motorola's miraculous phone. Cooper's photo, holding the brick to his ear, went viral by 1970s standards. He instantly became a tech rock star. But most importantly, he had completely seized the narrative. The future was now associated solely with him and the personal phone. For Bell Labs, it was a catastrophe. Their strategy, based on the slow and steady development of car phone networks, became obsolete overnight. They lost not only their technological, but also their moral advantage. Their government lobbyists could no longer argue that their path was the only correct one. Cooper had shown everyone an alternative. The anchoring effect, described by Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman, came into play. Cooper anchored the idea of a personal phone in the minds of the public and regulators. From that moment on, any other concept, including car phones, automatically seemed like a step backward. Despite the triumph, the phone's journey to the mass consumer still took another 10 years. Licenses had to be obtained, infrastructure built, and the device's size and cost reduced. The first commercial Dynatac 8000X didn't go on sale until 1983. It cost $3,995, which is roughly $12,000 in today's money. If, in 1983, you were offered a $12,000 phone that worked for 30 minutes and weighed a kilogram, would you have bought it? Probably not. But the early adopters did. They weren't paying for convenience, but for status and for a connection to the future. They weren't buying a gadget, they were buying a legend born from that very call. One of the first owners was Michael Douglas, playing Gordon Gekko in the movie Wall Street. That phone on the beach became a symbol of 1980s power and wealth. People weren't buying a device, they were buying the image of Gordon Gekko. What became of Joel Engel? He continued to work at Bell Labs and even made significant contributions to the development of cellular technologies. But he forever entered history as the man who received that call, the man who heard about the future from his chief rival. History remembered not his contributions, but that humiliating pause on the line. This is a classic example of a narrative trap. Despite all his achievements, including the prestigious Alexander Graham Bell Medal, Engel remained a secondary character in Martin Cooper's story. History is written not only by the victors, but also by the best storytellers. Now, look at your phone. It's light, powerful, and lasts for days, but its DNA is the DNA of that very brick. The idea that communication should be personal, not tied to a car or a home, is a direct credit to Martin Cooper. Yet, his main legacy isn't the device itself. It's the concept of the personal number. Before Cooper, a phone number belonged to a place, a house, an office, a car. He was the first to realize the idea that a number belongs to the person, wherever they may be. Your phone number is a digital passport, and he laid the foundation for that concept. That call changed more than just technology. It changed culture. It gave birth to the idea of being always connected, which defines our lives today. It rewrote the rules of business, social interactions, and even personal safety. The world in which you can contact anyone from anywhere in seconds. That world began with a single audacious act on a New York City street. Martin Cooper is now over 90 years old and remains active. The irony is that he believes modern people spend too much time on their smartphones. The creator of the mobile phone urges us to live our lives, not spend them on the phone. He gave us freedom, and yet in his view, we have turned it into voluntary servitude. This is the paradox of the creator. In one interview, he said, "My heart breaks when I see people crossing the street engrossed in their phones. They've gone crazy." What if Cooper had lost? Imagine for a second a world where Bell Labs philosophy had prevailed. Perhaps we would still only be using phones in cars. The internet would remain tethered to stationary points. There would be no Uber, no Instagram, no mobile banking. The entire modern on-demand economy rests on the foundation laid that day. To call a taxi, you'd have to find a payphone or run to your car. The very model of instant access to services simply wouldn't exist. This story isn't just about technology. It's about how true breakthroughs are always a gamble against the system. It's about believing in an idea that everyone else deems insane. And sometimes, to prove your point, creating a product isn't enough. You need to make a statement, a loud, audacious, and very personal one. And in this lies the three main lessons of this story. First, Bell Labs created a technology, the car phone, and tried to impose it on people. Cooper, however, started with a vision. Communication should be personal. Only then did he create the technology to realize it. This is a classic example of the start with why principle. Cooper's why was simple. People should be free. His what was the mobile phone. Bell Labs started with the what, a bulky device in a car, and never truly managed to explain why anyone needed it, beyond a handful of the wealthy. The second lesson? Story beats fact. Cooper could have held a private presentation in a conference room, shown slides, convinced a few officials. Instead, he staged a theatrical event on the streets of New York. He intuitively applied what today is called guerrilla marketing. Instead of a multi-million-dollar advertising campaign, he created a single, incredibly powerful media event. That call secured him free press coverage worldwide. Your product might be brilliant, but if its story is dull, it will lose. And the third, most important lesson. The call to Joel Engel transformed an abstract technological race into a personal duel. People love stories about individuals, not corporations. Cooper made Engel the face of the faceless AT&T. He turned a complex battle over frequencies into an understandable and gripping David and Goliath story. Every hero needs their villain to bring a story to life. Find your Joel Engel. Define what or whom you are fighting against. This will make your mission clear and inspiring. So, that very first call, what was it? First and foremost, a brilliant marketing move that should be in textbooks, or a simple human desire to prove superiority and humiliate a rival? A triumph of technology or a triumph of ego? In the comments, write just one word, technology or ego. Let's see which outweighs the other.